He is the chosen one. You must see it.
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
Is it the chosen one?
He is.
And it is the Jedi who will stand in the way of peace.
The first galactic empire!
It's not whether or not we fight.
It's how we choose to fight that matters.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
The Force will be with you, always.
I will not be the last Jedi.
Hello and welcome to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast. This is day one of what is going to be a year-long Star Wars marathon where we watch all of the canon films and television shows in chronological order. Starting today with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, the first of the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy, in our introduction to a young Anakin Skywalker, Queen Amidala, and the re-emergence of the Sith as the sun begins to set on the Jedi and the Galactic Republic. My name is Yates, and I will be the moderator for this discussion. Joining me are my friends and Star Wars fans. We'll go down the row. Jordan.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Jordan. If you're just starting here and you'd like a little more context, myself and Jordan prepared what is essentially a primer episode where we will talk a little bit about us and our relationship with Star Wars and what our expectations were going into this experience. Jordan, you write comics and play music. Don't undersell yourself.
Yeah, if you want to know about me, listen to the first episode.
All right, there you go. Next down the line is Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm relatively new to Star Wars fandom, so I'm excited to be the newbie voice of the group.
And very specifically, Jessica has not seen the prequel trilogy before and is fresh off of Phantom Menace for the first time.
Whoop, whoop.
That's going to be fun to talk about. And then lastly on our panel, we got Keats.
Hi, I'm Keats. And the panelist here, the moderator is my brother. I just thought I should mention that right off the bat. I'm very familiar with Star Wars. I grew up with Star Wars, really loving it. Clone Wars, I was never so hot on, but actually recently I've been really appreciating it. Love all the new Rebel stuff. Really into all the novels as of a few months ago. I'm like 6 or 7 novels deep right now. Really love Star Wars. I really want to be a film editor. I think it's okay to say I'm like the youngest of the group.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
How old are you?
Keats is the youngest of the group.
How old are you?
Keats is the youngest of the group.
12.
So none of us are full-time creators, and none of us are full-time creatives, and none of us work in the realm of media or fan nerd like news coverage or anything like that. We are just people who love stories, who love Star Wars, and we love talking about Star Wars. So I think this is a good point of clarification. This is not a review channel. It's not a news coverage channel. We're not going to go into too much speculation or what-if scenarios or any of the sort of clickbaity posturing that's been a part of the discussion amongst fans for a while now. There's a ton of that content available already, and some of that is really very good. But what we're doing is we're just going to be responding to the story and analyzing the story as it is, warts and all, in chronological order, starting with The Phantom Menace. So we will be talking about the themes, the lore, the characters, the world, and how all of these things evolve over the course of the entire saga.
I think it might be also noteworthy just to say that we're not... You might see some people on the internet who are like, Star Wars people, but they're not really like film people. I think we're all pretty much here like really appreciate, the big screen pictures.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that I'm probably Jessica, the only girl. I think that I'm probably the one least into like traditional nerd fandom, but my background is more in like literature. I went to a liberal arts college and majored in literature there, and that's like my nerddom when I was a kid, was like reading that kind of stuff. So now that I'm older, I'm getting into all the kind of more classic stuff that I was supposed to get into when I was a kid. So we all come at it from our own perspectives, and I think we're going to give a fresh perspective.
I agree 100%, and I'm excited to hear everyone's opinions here on this panel. And if we're certainly starting in the thick of it with the Phantom Menace, so it's going to be hard to disassociate this movie from like the fan reaction or fan backlash when the movie first came out. It's hard to separate it from that now, but I think we can do exactly that. And so, without further ado, we will begin. The story starts on two Jedi Knights, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, as they enter the Trade Federation ship. And they're there on a diplomatic mission. We know that it's involves the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems.
Yeah!
So we open from their perspective and the perspective of the Jedi, which, even someone who hasn't seen Star Wars has some familiarity with. Does anyone want to take a crack right off the bat on why Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are there, or even just an impression of how they felt when they first walked on screen?
Because the Chancellor sent them.
Yeah, the Chancellor sent them. So it was, it's presumably of high importance, right? It's although we don't really see the nature of the conflict isn't entirely clear, that it's given the highest matter of importance, and obviously
they really need to speak to somebody about something very important.
Yeah.
So why is it so important?
Well, it was important enough for the Trade Federation, which, we take it is involved in trade and is somehow being affected by these laws. It's important enough to them so that they would essentially annex this planet of Naboo that they've essentially taken hostage. But how Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, were they going there? At the end of the day, they go there, they turn on their lightsabers, and they kick stuff and blow stuff up and slice it up. But originally they went there to negotiate. And,
Were they really, though?
Right, so they show up, and we don't really get to see that part of them, really. They just sort of, they show up, and, an attempt on their life is made with a gas, and the droids go in to attack them. So, they have probable cause to go and, lightsabers blazing and mess up the place. But, from the outset, basically, the Jedi are sort of on the defensive, but they are very easily, surmount all the problems that come up against them, except for droidicas, which are impossible to defeat.
Yeah, why are droidicas so OP, Yates?
I don't know. They are pretty overpowered. They have deflector shields, and that's it. They have deflector shields, and they have to run away.
I mean, they're just really cool.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Jar Jar literally destroyed one by shooting it on accident.
Didn't have its shields up. Didn't have shields up.
That's true. He has it there.
Yeah, we see your bias bleeding through.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, are they kind of I don't know, they're war generals, but they're also diplomats, but they're also kind of glorified bodyguard, beating people up people.
Sure.
Judge, jury, and executioner of what it says on the paper.
Are they
Exactly.
anything the Senate tells them to be?
That's a good question. I think that's why the council exists, I would guess, but I think we'll get into that more as it goes on. But, I mean, they weren't even dispatched by the Senate in this case. They were dispatched by the Chancellor, who is, in effect, the president. So it definitely seems more in the realm of, Secret Service type of work.
Yeah.
And yet
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I don't think they were going there to... Why were they going there again?
They were going there to settle presumably for the Trade Federation to leave, create a situation.
They're going there to negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going there to negotiate at all. They were just trying to scope out the scenario and see what's going on.
I just realized I think we completely glossed over something really important. As far as first impressions for the movie go, The original trilogy came out like 30 plus years ago. And one of the first characters we see on screen is a character we are familiar with, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Sure.
So we're kind of going through his eyes on this.
Yeah, in a way we are, and Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan's in a bit more of a passive position, and Qui-Gon is definitely more active in making decisions. Obi-Wan is still the pupil. He's in a very different position than he was when what we know him from.
Yeah, Qui-Gon is basically like a real character. Obi-Wan is like, meh. Meh, meh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a foil. Pay attention to me, Dad. I'm still learning. And it's just like, there's not much with his character.
No, yeah.
Except, like, looking cool.
He does look pretty cool.
Which I think is, like, a big thing with the Jedi. Is, like, we are powerful with the Force, and we kind of, like, set our own hours, like, make our own rules for our job, and, like, we look really cool. Like, that's how we use the Force, is to, like, just be the cool guys of the universe.
Sure.
It's a really good establishing moment when you first see Qui-Gon, when you first see Obi-Wan speaking to Qui-Gon, and he's like, I sense something very fearful, and he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it's not here, but it's, elsewhere. Well, just like that whole conversation I thought was really excellent demonstration of, like, his kinship to Qui-Gon in general.
Sure. Well, by you mean just, like, in terms of just them setting them up as, like, being friends, or just setting them up as being...
more, like a father-son relationship.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of... in my opinion, I feel like it's more so implied. They're just always together, and once they.
Yeah, but that's like the first thing. That's the first thing of dialogue they have together. So I just thought that was worth mentioning. I wrote it in my notes.
They are, like, cool enough to be canon. That was one of the takeaways I got from, like, the two of them as characters was, like, okay, like, I accept them in, like, all of this, because they just are, like, legitimately give off, like, a cool presence.
Sure, yeah. The second they walk on, like, you believe them.
Yeah.
You buy into, like, oh yeah, I like seeing, hooded wizard people, like, go through this giant space station.
I like their vibe.
I like this vibe.
They have a good synchronization.
Yeah.
Like when they trick Jar Jar into showing him their hidden city.
City.
Uh-huh.
Can you take us there?
On second thought, no. Not really, no. He's embarrassing. But, my friend might have been banished. My forgotten. The bosses would do terrible things to me. Terrible things to me if me going back there.
You hear that?
Yeah?
That is the sound of 1,000 terrible things heading this way.
If they find us, they will crush us, grind us into tiny pieces, and blast us into oblivion.
Ah. Your point is well seen.
Sure, yeah. I guess there is sort of a lot of nonverbal communication between them. Like, they just know.
Blast us into oblivion.
Yeah, they both sort of bully Jar Jar into like letting him into his Jar Jar's kingdom, which he's not even allowed into.
And that kingdom is just, like, straight out of, like, the Finding Nemo, like,
oh my God.
editing
I was gonna say that.
Like, it's just, like, the ugliest, like, animation ever. I truly hated every moment in their underwater kingdom for, like, how corny it was.
You sound big doo-doo this time.
And I do like Jar Jar, but it's just, like, after, like, minute 20 of Jar Jar, I'm just like, all right, like, got it.
I get what this person is about. Yeah, he's clumsy.
It's like a lot of comic relief.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
That was something I definitely, like, didn't really think about all the times I watched it when I was younger. Just, like, how actually written funny The Phantom Menace is. Like, a lot of people, like, look at it from a distance and just call it, like, a very bland political movie. But it's actually got, like, a fair bit of humor in it. Like, and it's really dry and really tasteful. Like when Jar Jar collapsed into a pile of rubble. Or got his tongue numb.
Or when he stepped in the poop. Why did he step in
all
the
the Jar Jar humor is like, his
It's like
preschool slapstick, but there's actually some actually really good humor in that, I thought, in the movie.
Well, we were talking about this earlier today of like, this is kind of a, like, what I got from this was like, oh, it's a kids movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot of like kids things in it, like cool pod race, like can't wait to talk about this. The kids at Chuck E. Cheese, like Anakin is super young.
Mm-hmm.
He's so young. I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead.
No, I mean, I think that's for Anakin and Padme are, as like characters, are both a young perspective and kind of probably like supposed to be an audience surrogate for the kids that are in the audience. And that is, it's
cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it is cool. But it's interesting that instead the movie starts on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, and we really don't get to Padme and Anakin until later, like a lot later in the movie. And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, they are able to quickly discern what is going on, and or perhaps not the full scope of what's going on, but Qui-Gon at least quickly realizes that there's something. I think he says just the Trade Federation, nothing they're doing is making sense, and their instinct is just Vico Dios, let's get out of here. We're getting it. Let's help the people of Naboo and get out of here. And yeah,
are we segueing to Naboo?
Sure, we could. So Naboo is like the heart of the story. I would think in terms of like.
Everything revolves around it, like the Jedi stuff, the political stuff.
Yeah, everything revolves around like saving Naboo, and we even get. I mean, we don't really even get this in the original trilogy, which is like the idea of like of the planet being invaded, and we get to see that. I mean, it could have been. It would have been nice to see like the actual citizens, because we don't really get to see that. We just see the aristocracy being affected.
Right, exactly.
But we do have the moment where Queen Amidala says, I'm not going to create a course of action that's going to lead a war here, and then we cut to immediately the ships landing, and it's this really cool montage.
I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
And all the ships come, and they march right up to the front steps of the palace, that was like. That's something we didn't really get in the originals, and now as the start of a chapter, we really see what that looks like, and
we also didn't get Jar Jar in the originals.
That's absolutely true.
That's subjective, I think.
We got the spirit of Jar Jar.
Yeah, that's true.
Permeating throughout the entire universe. I do like how they show multiple different species that live on one planet and like different factions. It's not just like, this is the planet of Naboo, everyone is the same, just like on your planet Earth. It's like, that's how it usually is in like all of sci-fi. It's like a planet is supposed to be cohesive, but like it never is, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like for the point of like simplification, like just the whole planet is this. The whole planet is a gigantic forest or a gigantic palace.
Yes, not to like go on like a rabbit trail or whatever. That's like so true. We don't get a lot of that. I think like Naboo and then like Mon Cala are like the only two planets that have
dynamic,
that are dynamic with multiple species.
Sure, yeah. And
I would like to see more of that.
Yeah, me
well,
too.
and then the question, and I guess we won't get too into this because also I don't think there's an answer, but just the question of like, oh, is this actually the Gungans planet and the Naboo are just like human people that came in and set up shop there like 200 years ago?
Colonizers.
Absolutely colonialism, like 100%. Like just,
that's why we so no like in the Naboo.
Yeah, I mean they're relegated to living underwater. I mean maybe that's their natural.
Yeah, Boss Nass doesn't like them. So that might be the reason.
Yeah, but it's also kind of the key to the story because how they ultimately end up winning is uniting the humans and the Gungans to fight on the same side.
I think like a lot of the emotional impetus though of the movie is like kind of based on a like something false, which is like, I mean more so the emotional impetus of the movie is like to complete this whole trilogy and like lead us towards the next movie and the next movie. Like that's where I buy in the most. But then a lot of this stuff just as a standalone movie, which I think is a lot of the criticism I always hear about Star Wars, is like, as a standalone movie, it's not that good. Like, I'm not saying as a standalone movie it's not that good, because I do like it, but they keep saying, like, we have to protect the Naboo way of life. We have to protect our people. And it's just like, what is your way of life? Like, What are your people? Like, I have no idea. I mean, I don't even get why, like, you live in the future, yet you're a queen, but you're elected, so I guess then that's okay. But, like, what is this planet all about and your species?
Sure, yeah. I think Naboo is, like, it's, well, I think they're 100% selling it on, like, the visual idea of it.
Yeah.
And just, like, the fact it looks like a paradise, and it's also like, you know, it's like it's one with nature, kind of. The palace is
Deep Space Nine.
Sure.
Sorry.
Is that a Star Trek reference?
Yes.
The palace is built on top of like a natural waterfall, and there's like vines growing up, like in Italy, like growing up all the palace doors and lots of like more wildlife that doesn't look disgusting like the original trilogy. Like no rancors are like walking around in Naboo. It's all beautiful creatures.
True. It's just like the idea of like protecting nature or like a more natural planet.
Yeah, I think so, and like
I could see that.
But yeah, and then there's the question of the Queen Amidala she's elected, but is she like kind of? And she's.
What's her deal?
Yeah, Queen Amidala's like.
Yeah, Queen Amidala, get back at us. World Between the World podcast at gmail.com.
She's like 13 years old. I mean, I always kind of thought that it was kind of like destiny, like Chinese child emperors,
right.
Like they were just, you know, the God determined that the Queen Amidala is queen, and.
Right.
But apparently she's elected. It's pretty weird.
I think like a big part of it is just like, oh, like she looks cool, you know, and like cool. Like this is a chance for us to have outfits.
Yeah, it's 100% like she's way more exotic than.
This is a chance for us to have outfits.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it's
like Queen Amidala did an outfit change. Yeah. Like that's really cool.
yeah.
No. We gotta sell action figures.
Yes. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Wait, so she's 13?
I think so. She's supposed to be like 13 or 14.
Meanwhile, Anakin is seducing her, and he's like in the womb.
It's
just like the power of his midichlorians or whatever the heck those are.
Yeah, I have the highest midichlorian count. Don't you just want me?
A little baby. It's like a child.
His swag account is off the charts.
So I guess we talked about how Naboo is like a sort of like a paradise. Like it's something that is easy to buy into, wanting to save with little exposition, kind of. And
you
but
convinced
then
me.
yes, but okay. I'm sorry, I talked about that. But the how they ultimately leave, and they're told that the Senate is the place that they need to go to solve their problems.
They leave the Garden of Eden to eat from the Tree of Knowledge.
Yeah, sure, and I think it's also cool. Like Padme is
no.
Queen Amidala is like 14 years old, so it is kind of like a trial of her innocence, kind of, I guess. Like, you know, they're like, are you ready to go into the real world, into the big city? And that's where you go to solve your problems for real. And she's like, oh, let's do that. And
I didn't even notice that. Was that like her first time going, or?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure it's her first time going to the Senate, because it's like a pretty big deal. I don't remember if it said in a line. I think it's her first time going to.
Yeah, I think during the Senate meeting, they're like representing the newly represented.
Oh yeah, newly elected
Queen Amidala.
Yeah. She's like.
Oh.
Yeah. And she got a tough hand of cards. Like, you know, she's queen for like a couple, maybe a year, a couple months, and then her planet gets invaded for like it's pretty.
Right. That's like what blasts her onto the world stage, like the universe stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is like this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, she does a good job in the short term, but then what about the long term?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess she's really getting played, right?
Yeah. I mean,
well,
Palpatine uses her.
Palpatine
Yeah.
uses the whole situation.
Yeah, and Palpatine is from Naboo, which is I always thought is like interesting. Like,
Well, I don't think he's. I mean, I think he's taking advantage of her for like the majority of the movie, but there's like very like a very outspoken line by Palpatine where he's just like he tries to use her during the Senate meeting, and then she's like, you know what, I'm done with the Senate. I'm just gonna go handle my problems by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, this is so unlike her.
But doesn't he orchestrate the entire situation to get control?
Yeah. I think it's like a valid question, honestly, at any point through the prequel trilogy or the Clone Wars. Is like, does Palpatine 100% know how this is going to go down, or is he really good at rolling with the punches? I really enjoy. I think it could be played either way. I think it could definitely be that Palpatine is like knows that he senses like deep down that Padme or Queen Amidala is this heroic figure that will go back for her people, or he could be totally thrown for a loop, but it still everything ends up in his lap and everything ends up working towards his favor.
I don't know. I think that makes him less exciting if you're supposed to assume everything is going into his plan. I think that makes him a lot less interesting of a character if he's completely flawless and knows everything, all the outcomes.
Well, we don't know. Like, so I think it's.
I'm saying if you choose to believe that, that's a lot less interesting of a character.
But he's the one in the robe, like talking to Viceroy Gunray, like on FaceTime or whatever the heck that thing is, right? Like he's the one.
Well, we don't know that yet. It hasn't been.
I mean, I got that. I mean, am I wrong? Like, did I read that wrong? Like,
I don't know.
He's
We have
the
to watch
one, like, in the robe.
Yeah.
So he's like, he has a plan.
Yeah.
He has a plan, and I don't think that I think you can believe both. Like, he's got a plan. The plan is not always going to work out, but like he's trying for something. He's a little schemer.
Mm-hmm. And Padme and Anakin, like, those are kind of like he doesn't know how that's going to work out. But the Senate, every single thing he says about the Senate plays out exactly as he says it's going to. And from the very beginning of the movie, I think one of his first lines is like, I'm going to make sure things stay exactly. I'm going to make sure things stay in the Senate stay exactly as they are, and he's just consistently with 100% straight face, this is what's going to happen. This is how the Senate is going to act, because he's that's his arena, and he really knows. He's an expert at it.
So what is his thing, originally? What is his role in the beginning of the movie that Padme knows?
Right. Yeah, so he's a senator, so he's representing the planet in the Senate, and that's really...
Are there two senators?
There might...
Just one. We don't know.
I don't know, yeah. There might be.
I think there's multiple ones. Because, if you look at other planets, in their little, hover thingies, there's always, 3...
It's like the UN.
Representatives.
The Senate is the UN of, the galaxy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could also do it just using the United States as an example. Just each of the planets is a state, and then there's one unifying federal body, which is the entirety of the Galactic Republic.
This is a kids movie, everybody.
I was literally just gonna say you should stop.
It's just it's not like it's not in the movie, because I think Jordan, you made a good point. It's
But is that what people want us to talk about?
That's what I want to talk about.
Well, it's like SpongeBob. You
all right, I like where this is going.
you have your kiddie silly stuff, but then you have the adult jokes, because they know the adults are going to be watching this with the kids, so you have to keep both parties entertained.
But I think it's the reverse, where it's sprinkled adult jokes in SpongeBob, whereas this is sprinkled kids moments in the movie.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, I think it kind of is.
That's what's so great about Star Wars, though.
No, it's not like SpongeBob. I'm just kidding.
That's what's so great about Star Wars, though, is you grow with it. There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of food for thought.
Yeah.
It's not just it's oh, like, this is, like, a fun action movie to watch this summer. But it's, like, also something that, like, nerdy people can talk about, like, for multiple hours. You know? And I really like the way that the Senate is portrayed in the movie. Like, I thought that was, like, a cool, like, visual statement, how they did that.
Yeah.
I also really liked how I thought Emperor Palpatine was, like, a very good character in this movie. I was like, yeah, I can totally see that guy, like, becoming, like, terrible, like, Sith Lord Emperor Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that, I really bought that.
Sure, yeah, I agree 100%.
Hell yeah.
First curse word. Bam, 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 bam.
And of course it was me.
So yeah, I guess it would be a good time to bring up, like, just like, so when you look at the original trilogy, the setup of, like, the threat is very simple. It's like the Empire. In this, there's a lot of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of depth to, like,
there's
going on.
Yeah, there's more moving pieces. There's there's the corruption in the Senate. There's the Sith reemerging. There's the droid army and the Trade Federation, and then there's, like, the outlaws on Tatooine, and they're all presenting problems for our protagonists, and they kind of have to figure their way through all of them.
Yeah, they do a lot in the movie, for sure.
Yeah, the pod race goes on for like an hour.
That's true.
Yeah,
it's just the same shot of Anakin too, just... Oh, they can't see me?
No, they can't. Rewatching it, I was shocked. Basically, like, the crux of the end of the fight, I think Anakin is, like, pretty much, like, pure good in the start of this movie. But then, like, how he wins is basically he just hardcore messes up Sebulba. Like, he could have killed Sebulba. This 9-year-old kid could have killed...
He was asking for it.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
He could have...
He
was jeopardizing his life.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely.
It was self-defense.
It was just like, so it's the last of the two of them, and then just, like, Anakin's just like, well, only one of us is gonna win, and then just, like, if you die, sorry.
They did a good job of, like, look how good Anakin is. He's, like, 2 years old. Like, that was the main thing making Anakin... Well, no, there's other things making Anakin good. But even in this movie, I could tell, like, yeah, I could see this guy becoming evil. Because he's very, like, belligerent, you know? He's very, like, meh! I don't know, just, like, has, like, a very strong, like, kind of pushy way. Mm-hmm. About him. Did anyone else pick up on that from him, or was I just, like, reading into it?
No, I guess...
You know what I mean?
Like, he's always whining, like he wants something.
Yeah, he's always, like,
he wants something, and what he wants is to help people. What he wants is, like, to help people, but he, like, wants it so bad he will, like...
He'll kill people for it.
Yeah, he just really wants his vision to play out, or, like, really thinks he's in the right, or just, like... His mom also got totally screwed over.
Yeah.
And she's Mary, apparently. Like, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
And Anakin's Jesus.
Yeah.
And they live in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
Oh my god. You're right.
Oh my god.
Has your...
Oh!
My favorite sets, though, are when they're on, like, the desert planets.
Yeah.
That's, like, my favorite.
It's cool, and it looks just like it does in A New Hope too. I think for the most part, it says, but it's bigger and there's more people and it feels a little more
CGI,
more CGI creatures.
But when we were under the sea, and like the colonized like Gungan world, I was like, I hate this. And then when we returned to like the dusty desert, I was like, yes. Comfort zone. This is what I want it to look like.
It's a good Star Wars comfort zone. It's like you're in the desert, you know you're in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to something you were saying before, which was you were just talking about how pure good Anakin is represented in this movie, and then I caught on that, and then they do something where they do the midichlorian count, and the quote reads, "Not even Master Yoda has a midichlorian count that high." Then Qui-Gon says, "No Jedi has." Obi-Wan, "What does that mean?" Qui-Gon, "I don't know." And then just very ominous music in the background. And that's like kind of the only like that's one of the biggest hints, if you've never seen Star Wars before, that he is, very destined to turn the other direction.
Sure. I mean, yeah, and I feel like kind of the whole Jedi reaction is that way. I mean, the Jedi seem very preoccupied with lots of things, and even at the point of sidelining Anakin pretty immediately, and just like, nope, we got to get back to like CNN coverage of this like trade conflict.
Right.
And
it's like a presidential race, but then you also have like the Mayans saying the world is going to end. It's like, which one do we cover? Obviously, the current
What a great analogy.
Except the Mayans were right.
Oh no.
This is our sequel trilogy.
Mace Windu and Yoda they're really not about Anakin, and that they all seem, and the reason is just they're like, oh, we don't know what's gonna happen to you, so it's not worth it. Sorry, we're cutting our losses. Like, see ya, Anakin, you're not getting trained.
So we were also, something I was thinking about was, does Qui-Gon Jinn get a little bit, I don't want to say like tempted by the dark side, but like he kind of does the wrong thing, where he's like talking, first scene, he's talking to Obi-Wan, he's like, haha, Obi-Wan, you have so much to learn. Like, scene directly after that, he's like, please let me train this guy. Like, please let me train.
Directly says, I've taught you everything.
Yeah, he's like, he's fine. Then he dies, and then Obi-Wan has to train Luke, which that seems like a major oversight. Or not Luke, Anakin. Sorry. That seems like a major oversight that they're like, yeah, this newly minted Jedi who hasn't even passed his exam, like, let's give him the most powerful Jedi with very strong, like, going wrong potential.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a suspension of disbelief, I think.
Sure. Maybe it is. In terms of the Destiny part, I think that was cool to me upon rewatching. Just like, it was like, was it supposed to be Qui-Gon that taught Anakin? If Qui-Gon taught Anakin, would everything have been different? But instead it's Obi-Wan, who's sort of like a neutral character. He's the one, he doesn't really want to teach Anakin. I mean, he says
I never really thought about that before, but like they kind of like just hand off Anakin to the most unbalanced Jedi Council, or not Jedi Council, but Jedi Master of the entire building. Like, he's just very he'll joke around. His emotions are very unstable, I guess, compared to the rest of them.
Obi-Wan, sure,
yeah. Compared to Qui-Gon, who's like a flatliner. Flatlander.
Well, I was thinking kind of in certain points of the movie that, like, Qui-Gon Jinn kind of reminded me of Diego Luna's character in Rogue One, because he was, like, very willing to just be like, let me, like, cheat. Like, I'm just gonna do whatever it takes to, like, get my ends, because I know my ends are good.
Sure. Yeah, Qui-Gon lies just throughout the entire movie and tricks people.
Yeah,
and cheats, I think it steals Anakin.
Yeah. I think, is it fair to say it's like a superiority
He's a bad
complex?
Dude, but are all the Jedi a bad dude?
Yeah, I think it's like intentional to kind of make the Jedi, like, I see it coming up a lot of like, are the Jedi just good? Are they like pure good? I don't think so.
At multiple points through the movie, Qui-Gon comes up with comes up against a problem, and his answer usually is Jedi mind trick. Jedi mind trick, take your free will away.
Yes, one of the things that really interested me was...
take your free will away.
One of the things that really interested me was just, they arrived, like, on Naboo, and they're basically just going to do whatever they want, because Qui-Gon, like, goes down to the planet core, or not the planet core, he goes down to the Gungan city, and he speaks to Boss Nass, Boss is in the name, so, You shouldn't be tricking the boss to get what you want.
You shouldn't be tricking the boss. And yeah,
but it's so arrogant, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, I'll just like, I don't care. Like they're like above the law of all planets and all things.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't work, like against Watto, he just looks so salty and like immature.
Sure, yeah.
He's literally pouting.
He's literally pouting, yeah. He's like, I can't see.
Yeah, that was weird. That's like kind of weird that Toydarians are specifically, off the Jedi's leash.
With Hutts.
Or just the idea that the majority of them are...
Oh, yeah. Well, Luke's unexperienced, so...
Just the idea that they're, like, strong-willed, I guess. I don't know. Because their culture cares about money. I don't know. It's unclear. It's unclear.
Wait,
they're greedy.
Do you want to say the quote for us?
Cares about money?
Yeah, that's why with the Jedi mind trick doesn't work. It's like, mind tricks don't work. Only money.
Only money.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's like the greedy... What's their race?
The Troydarians.
The Troydarians?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could just be also the case where it could also just be the case where like they there's a one line where Watto says like, oh, I only care about money, and then some writer made it so that the whole culture is like based around money and they're all greedy.
Wow, you're probably right.
That's like always though with like with the Catch-22 with the EU.
They seem so chill in the Clone Wars though.
Yeah, we'll see them soon.
They're very like neutral evil.
Sure, yeah. I mean, and Watto's pretty upset by the end of it too, because Qui-Gon does like take everything from him. I mean, he takes presumably. Watto...
Oh, we're talking about the little like flying fat guy.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Viceroy, whatever.
Yeah, we're talking about the blue flying
I feel
fat
bad
guy.
for that guy.
Yeah, he kind of.
Wait, you feel bad for Watto?
I mean, he's
a slave owner.
He's a slave owner.
Yeah, I think that's
he's more
built in.
like an indentured servant owner. Am I being a slave owner apologist right now?
It's unclear the rules of slavery. I feel like we could do a whole episode on how
Where's
does
my
slavery
book
work
on
in Star Wars.
Star Wars rules of slavery? I want my money back.
We'll get a textbook soon.
I want to talk more about the Viceroy Gunray. What is their race?
They're the Neimoidians.
The Neimoidians.
Yeah, and they, for whatever reason, they own, I guess, a monopoly on trade and how trade works. It's unclear. They own the Trade Federation. Are like other cultures involved in that?
But I find them kind of like.
There are, right?
Well, yeah, there are. Don't we find out in
I was just about to say, but...
episode 2, which we haven't watched yet, so I have no idea.
No. Well, they have their own entities.
Oh, yeah. Like the robot guy. He's from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I find them actually to be kind of funny because they're just like so naive and ignorant. They're just like, like this isn't working out. Like, like the Sith. Like they have a mind of their own. Like,
yeah, it's like they're definitely 100% bad guys, but they're so bad at it. Like
Jedis are coming to swarm us. Put the door up.
It's just like all greed, no strategy.
Yeah, 100%.
All greed, no strategy.
Like Watto.
Kind of, yeah.
His strategy is to gamble.
Yeah, it's definitely like I think short-sightedness. I think is like that's the theme that's in all of Star Wars. It's just like you can't really put yourself in someone else's shoes. You can't look ahead of the game.
That's a really good theme, though. Like I feel like that's a theme that we don't talk about or have as much, but short-sightedness like affects our lives and our like historical trajectory so much.
Sure. Yeah, they're like, let's take over this country so we can boost our profits. For like, don't worry about like the details.
Right, but yeah, you're right. Like, kind of in Qui-Gon Jinn is being pretty short-sighted too about Anakin and Obi-Wan and everything like that. Padme's being kind of short-sighted. I mean, maybe I don't know how much we can really blame her.
I don't think she's being as short-sighted as the rest of the characters, though.
Yeah,
like
I
she
would
gets
agree.
to a point where she like realizes how short-sighted she's being.
She's
I
really,
agree with that.
She's like one step ahead of everyone else,
Yeah.
I think. In this movie, she's got like the most like I was really shocked. I guess I remember it when I was a kid, but just like cutting to Padme reveals she's been the queen the whole time, and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are just like, what? like that is short-sighted. Like they they were traveling with him the whole time.
They look the exact same.
I thought Obi-Wan was in on it. His like facial expression is, like he looks away from Qui-Gon, like kind of like snickers, like haha, you got tricked.
You know, I was about to say like their expression looks like haha, I knew that.
It could be. I don't know. For me, it definitely Qui-Gon looked kind of like
Qui-Gon is so like father figure. He's like father figure archetype.
So he could be like forgetful and not pay attention.
Yeah, he's just like, I feel like he's just written as like, oh, like this is what everyone wants their dad to be, you know.
A liar?
Well, he
does
does
what everyone's dad.
Yeah. He does the one thing that Anakin only wanted in the world, but of course it came at a cost. Like he got him out of slavery and he became a Jedi. Anakin has dreams about being a Jedi.
He has Jedi blood.
Jedi blood. He's got that magic Jedi blood.
Which I hate.
Yeah, so I guess we should talk about that. But
we need to talk about that before we run out of time.
Okay.
MIDI samples.
Mitochondrias.
Kidster.
Yeah. The mitochondrians. Mitochondrians.
Yes. Jessica, did you know about the mitochondrias?
I had no idea. And I don't like it.
Go off.
Yes. I don't like it at all. I mean, I just hate it on so many levels. Like, Jedis are not supposed to be like determined by like their blood. I just find that very strange. Like,
very dystopian.
It is, and it's just like makes me like dislike the Jedi a lot more, because it's just like I feel like now we're getting to this like stupid Harry Potter thing of like the Muggles, the Half-Bloods, the Purebloods. It's just like, no, like but then again,
Jessica
it's like
thinks
why
Harry Potter's stupid.
I don't think Harry Potter is stupid.
Okay, I just wanted to say that so you could say
that. You guys didn't see
God,
my
we lost
finger.
half of our viewers.
I don't, but I just think this whole like that's like just a whole separate point to make is about like blood and purity through blood.
I think
if you're gonna do that, you have to like address it instead of just being like, oh yeah, this is like a throwaway we'll never talk about again, that there's like a biological determinism to the Jedi. Like that's a big deal if they're gonna decide to go that route with it, you know, because that's like biological purity and all that crap, and I don't like it.
Eugenics.
I don't think George Lucas could think of another way to explain how they found out how powerful Anakin was with the Force, maybe?
Well, I mean, they also, there's that whole thing, like, no human can do, like, a pod race, like, and Anakin does it, you know, there's, like, that whole thing.
No human can do a pod race?
According to Anakin.
According to Anakin.
He's been on one planet his whole life.
Yeah, he could be
like
talking himself up. Yeah, that's true.
That was a fact he said just then. Laser swords.
Yeah, I don't get it. But, I mean, they could have done something cool with it. Like, maybe there's, like a Force, like, field, and he fell into the Force, like, vat. Sure. Or, I don't know. That's, like, Batman. Joker. But, I mean, once I read about the wills and all that, and, like, all the different, like, smaller life forms that George Lucas was thinking about, and how that, like, is kind of more powering the Force, and like people or like larger beings or like the symbionts, then I was kind of like, okay, I can see where he's coming from and how it's not terrible, but I don't like how they just throw it out there. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they talk about it or develop it that much.
I think, because I think the intention was supposed to be like they're planting their seed in the first movie, and then they would expand on it, but then people obviously were like, this is a terrible idea, so they discontinued it. But, so yeah, I think like Qui-Gon says, or Anakin says, I don't understand, and then Qui-Gon's like, in time, you will.
But look also how life mirrors art, because sometimes people can be short-sighted in their hatred of certain things in the fandom, and then that just ends up screwing it up worse because other people react short-sightedly and don't like.
Do you think Anakin died not knowing the true purpose of midichlorians?
Maybe. I mean, presumably they have like a Midichlorian 101 class at the Jedi Temple, I feel.
Midichlorians for younglings.
That's what I loved about how Rey had no like connection to like the royal blood. You know,
So far.
she's just like her own. So far, true, but she's just like, I felt like that was a cool statement of like she's a Jedi just because she is. But now it's like, oh, she's a Jedi just because she is. Also, she is like special blood. Come on.
Sure, yeah. I think
It sells.
But it's also, I feel like what's so cool about it is we could all be like, well, maybe I could be a Jedi because I am like a power. I'm like also united with the power of the Force. Actually, no, you don't have good enough blood.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. At the same time, though, you know, like it's like Han Solo like could never like do a backflip and like push Darth Vader out a window with his, you know, with the power of his belief and the conviction in the Force. But, you know, I guess the door was always open, right? The door was always open that he could in the original trilogy, and now we know it is more determinate, but we don't really know how the rules work because they don't really talk about it in the content, really.
I think that's something that they kind of, not to like keep talking about future movies because I know you're probably going to cut it out, but I think that's something that they kind of introduce storytelling-wise with, you know, the newer movies. I think starting with Rogue One is just like the Force, like the people that study the Force rather than just being assigned the Force. And they're like semi-Force sensitive, so my guess is they probably all came from like a very low midichlorian count, but were able to project very high results by just putting in the time and effort.
Do you think there's like a doctor people go to like determine their midichlorian
Why would
count?
they? Qui-Gon just uses his phone.
Also, he steals blood from Anakin.
And lies to him about it.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
The way he lies about it, he's just so believing the fact that it's no big deal.
I'm checking for infections.
And he's just like, haha, son, like, no big deal.
You
Daddy
won't
knows
understand.
best.
Yeah, he literally like, hurts him. He's like, ow, what are you doing? He's like, lie. Lie.
But I think that that's all intentional. It's like, and that's from watching the Clone Wars show, I got a much better sense of that, of how, like, the Jedi are the root of their own undoing. Like, within the good, there's the cause of, like, the bad.
So, Qui-Gon obviously does all these things that, are morally questionable. But you sort of take him for granted as the hero of the story, and he's the one that wants to train Anakin, and we know the way that that's going. Anakin's going to be trained, but Qui-Gon is the one that dies. And Obi-Wan, who's pretty green, is the one that ultimately ends up taking out Darth Maul and getting revenge. Did Jedi get revenge?
But justice. We'll say justice.
Justice. Yeah. Darth Maul killed, and I think at the end they really sell the idea. Obi-Wan does love Qui-Gon. I mean, he's crying. He's pretty broken about that.
Yeah.
He took his master. He wanted revenge.
Yeah. But so
I'm so unstable. I'm gonna put the balance of the universe in my own hands.
Qui-Gon doesn't die because of any moral failing of his own, but he does die and has a lot of moral failings. Would it have been better if, like, I don't know, because he ultimately Darth Maul just wins because he's stronger. Like, there's no
his lightsaber has two sides.
His lightsaber has two sides, so he gets Qui-Gon because his lightsaber has two sides.
I would actually disagree. I think Qui-Gon dies because he's too, oh, okay, I know how this fight is going to go down. Like, when he gets punted in the chest, he has a look of how could this happen? How could I lose right now?
Sure, yeah. And Obi-Wan seems to be more in the moment because Obi-Wan is nervous. Obi-Wan is I don't think Qui-Gon can handle this guy. Mm-hmm. And this guy is Darth Maul, and we have barely talked about him the whole podcast.
That's because Star Wars barely talks about him.
Ooh.
Burn. Because what? I don't understand his character.
Sure.
He's a Sith apprentice, and it's pretty much it.
He's got horns.
And he looks
He's
cool.
He
the devil.
just looks cool.
Yeah.
I want some more. I think
Sure.
Emperor Palpatine is an awesome character.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the other evil characters later on down the road, like, kind of really suck. But we'll talk about that later. But I would really like to learn more about Darth Maul.
Yeah, he looks cool. I mean, it's way more exotic, like, at face value than Darth Vader is. Like, just Darth Vader walks on screen and it looks a very specific way. Darth Maul walks on screen and it's, like, definitely different. And yeah, I mean, he's just, I think he's
Why he look like that?
Why do you look like that? Great question.
Yeah, and I never thought about it, but, like, the only, like, Sith that people ever knew was, like, Darth Vader. So, like, the immediate next one was Darth Maul.
Well, the Emperor.
Well, but we never see him with, like, a lightsaber.
Sure.
And they're
he doesn't
both
really
a
do
Darth.
anything.
Yes.
What does that mean, that they're both Darth? What is that?
That's like when you become a Sith, you get a Darth name.
So, like, all Siths are Darths?
Yeah. Yeah, like,
Oh,
when Shiv Palpatine became a Sith, he got the name Darth Sidious. And then when Anakin Skywalker became a Sith, he got Darth Vader. Whatever Maul's name was, he got Darth Maul.
I thought that Palpatine became Emperor Palpatine, and there was, like, a whole ranking.
Yeah, well, that's
it's like an alter ego.
Yeah.
Got it.
Darth Sidious.
Who knows the Latin root of, like, Darth?
I know I've looked this up.
I know Vader is father, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe that was Darth. I don't remember which.
Is it
was.
just
I think
like-
Darth is just. I don't know. It could
It's like
be
dark.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever heard the word Sith in the original trilogy.
You don't. It's not. It's like in the supplemental materials from like when the movie. Like I remember seeing like there's like pamphlets that they handed out in the movie theater, and they call Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith, but they don't. So it existed that early on. And I think I read recently, even like Midichlorians existed like in like notes like from the original films as well. But they just weren't.
It was definitely like in George's original script that never got made.
Maybe.
Does Darth Maul ever talk in the movie?
He has like 3 lines.
What does he say?
It says like at least finally we'll reveal ourselves or something. Like
Yeah,
that.
at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we'll have revenge.
And there's one more before that, but I can't remember what it is.
At last.
Revenge.
Also, I'm looking at this action figure of Darth Maul, and he's totally wearing Crocs.
Uh-oh.
He's wearing black Crocs.
Uh-oh.
And I encourage all listeners to look at their Darth Maul action figure and check out the Crocs.
We
You're
know
welcome.
you have one.
Darth Maul dies really quickly. He's
or does he?
He's cut in half and falls down the chute.
That doesn't mean anything.
No one can
Nothing
die.
at all.
No one can die. But Darth Maul is taken care of pretty quickly, and then it's really because Darth Maul isn't a direct threat to the planet. It's the Trade Federation, and it's thanks to Padme and Anakin that they are ever able to deal with that stuff. I think it is kind of like the generational thing because they're the young people. But for the most part, once they apply themselves, they're like able to solve
They're competent.
their problems. Yeah. And it's ultimately Padme's decision to bring the Gungans to ally themselves with the Gungans. And Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan don't seem really about that at all. They're like, I don't know what we're going to do when we get back home, but we'll figure something out. And Padme's like, no, I'll figure something out. We're going to ask the Gungans for help, and we're going to create a better relationship for the people on this planet.
And similarly to Emperor Palpatine, she's like, I'm done with you. You're weird. Like, do my own thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's very young girl, like just like done with all these old white people telling her what to do, right?
Old
Just
white
like
men.
get out of here.
Yeah.
Those cis white males.
She has woman's intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And cool outfits.
And cool outfits. Best of both worlds. And Anakin, meanwhile, when we meet Anakin at the beginning, I was thinking about this. Anakin is like got everything figured out, and you were saying, Jordan, there's so much that happens to him, but Anakin just like he fixes the droids, he fights off Sebulba with his words. Like this little 9-year-old kid walks up to this like gangster looking crazy alien, and it's just like, hey, back off of this really easy to punch like Jar Jar Binks and like leave him alone. He's with me.
Yeah, he's like the cool kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a lot of friends.
No, they aren't.
Kids.
They constantly tease him about how his thing's never going to work.
I know. I just wanted to mention Kidster.
But yeah.
Yeah, he's got his own thing.
Yeah, he's got his own thing, and he's really good at everything he does. And then by the time he gets to the Jedi Temple, that's when I think everything changes. And once he leaves his mom, I mean that's like one of the big cruxes of the story. And I think for Anakin's story, that's the biggest thing that happens is he has to leave his mom.
I almost cried.
Is it too soon to say that the Jedi separate moms from their kids?
No, it's literally what they do.
Like, yeah, it's a thing. It's like a thing. It's like early young recruitment. Like
that's why they say he's too old to train, because they kidnap babies. Not kidnap. They like have to have consent.
But everyone like wants to be kidnapped.
Yeah.
I guess all the parents are like, oh yeah, Jedis are cool. Here, take my kid that I just gave birth to a couple months ago.
You're gonna have such a better life being under constant stress.
Sure. Yeah.
Keeping the galaxy at bay when you're 7.
Yeah.
What do you think they mean when they say that Anakin is going to bring balance to the Force?
Yeah, and that's a totally new
That's
idea.
the most that's the biggest question I think the prequels bring up is like why is that
Why do they need that?
No, yeah, I guess why do they need that? But mostly just like why is that a question? Why is the balance like so important? Hang on, let me.
Like, why is the Force unbalanced in the first place?
Yeah,
sure, yeah. Why is it
seem
unbalanced? But why is there like a prophecy that says why do they care about this prophecy?
Yeah.
Because there needs to be a prophecy.
There needs to be. Yeah, where does it come from? They don't even like try for a second. Like it's just like it's the prophecy.
If there's no prophecy,
it's like the
there's
game.
no like hook to keep the religion going.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. Like, and it's also like the the Shakespearean, like the second there's a prophecy, there's how the prophecy is going to play out, but work to no one's advantage. Like it's just like when you introduce the idea that what's going to happen, it's going to happen, but just the worst possible version of it.
I think Star Wars is super Shakespearean.
Definitely in Phantom Menace especially, because it's like all like it's like all the rich like aristocracy,
Court intrigue.
Yeah, and very simple emotional stuff like like I'm jealous of you, or like so like I'm covetous, or
I wouldn't say it's simple. I would say that it's like essential. Like they keep it to the essentials of like good and evil, but then there's so much like depth within that.
Let's there's the line, I think it plays exactly into what we're talking about, and I think it's sort of grown into a contentious line, and I'm curious what all you guys think about it. It might be a good place to leave off here to lead into next week, but it's the Yoda line: fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. That's his whole sort of linchpin as to why Anakin can't train, and to why Yoda's uncomfortable with Anakin. And if you're entering as a kid, or if you're entering as someone that's seen the other films, I mean, Yoda is like the authority. Yoda is the voice. Yoda's my favorite character. I love Yoda.
Yeah, can we repeat it again? Because I remember when I originally like watched it, I was like, let me turn this back. I want to learn something.
Yeah.
Like
fear leads to anger. Or let's play the clip. Roll the clip.
Thoughts dwell on your mother?
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What does that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
I remember thinking when I heard that quote, like, why is it in that order?
Yeah, well, it's I think a lot of people would say that it's not necessarily like, but I think for the Jedi, it's like just the idea. I mean, it's like very basic, like, don't let fear control your life, and that's Anakin's big thing.
Can I try to like?
Yeah.
Break it down. It's like the Jedi are very against having relationships. So it's kind of like in a relation, when you become close with someone, I guess, you have the fear of losing them, so it starts with the fear. And then when you do lose them, you get like angry. And then that anger, if it doesn't stop, just leads to suffering and just keeps building and building from there. That's why they take you away from your parents, so you can't like have a relationship with like a parent. That's why you can't like get married or be with anybody. The only relationship you really have is like with your master.
But I would say like suffering leads to fear. You know what I mean? And it's like not having relationships makes us suffer. So like they are kind of like putting Anakin in a situation where he's suffering because he's away from his mom. Now, I don't want to say they took him away from his mom. I would say, like, the conditions in the universe at this time are crappy, I mean, for a lot of people. So it puts him in the situation where being a skilled person, it's a much better life, an option for him to, like, leave his mom, never see her again. But, like, why, the fact that he never doesn't have to, can never see her again, it's kind of, like, artificial. So, you know, he's suffering from that, and that's making him angry, and that anger is making him afraid. You know, like, it could work the opposite way.
Wait a minute. Yoda speaks backwards, so maybe you're right.
Wow.
What?
That's such a cheat. I can't believe I've never heard that before. That's funny.
Wait, seriously?
No, I don't think it.
No, yeah.
Anyway,
it's not a thing. Okay.
Keats, any thoughts?
Okay, well, to go back on what Jordan was saying about cutting off relationships, I think that like that whole aspect of the Jedi is an extension of just being separated from emotion. So I think the biggest struggle you're going to deal with as a Jedi is the lack of any sort of emotional pour to you. And I completely forgot where I was going with this. But anyway, the quote itself, I've always kind of just generally agreed with it. But, you know, I feel like all those emotions are extensions of themselves. Like, they're all kind of just tied into each other in every direction.
Yeah.
It's like more of a web than a line.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think it's effective in describing perhaps Anakin's journey as like foreshadowing for what's for how his story unfolds. But yeah, as it's something to live by, would Yoda say that in the original trilogy anymore? It's not entirely clear.
I also wonder if in like a rolling with the punches sort of way, it is foreshadowing for all of the trilogies, because something I really like, and I know I'm breaking the rules here, but it's important. Something I really like in the new trilogy is like they kind of throw out the old way, and one of the famous quotes in the new movies is about like, we do this for our relationships. Like the reason that we're good and care about like the light side of the Force is because of our relationships with other people. And I feel like in our relationships with other people and in our emotions, we can bring balance to the Force in all of us. Like, no matter how much, no matter what our blood is like, our Midichlorians.
I agree, and I think we'll also, in its own way, see that play out and how conflict emerges from exactly what you're talking about. certainly in the Clone Wars and in Attack of the Clones as well. And I think that's a great place to leave off. Next week, we're doing Attack of the Clones. I can't wait to solely by myself argue for the merits of Attack of the Clones. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait.
Well, you know, that's what Star Wars is all about. Diverse opinions.
So it is.
So it is.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yippee! Oh yeah, we haven't talked about the giant war.
What's the giant war?
Like the giant fight?
Yeah, with like the Gungans and the droids.
Oh, that fight sucked.